Today on Cooking Tips with Dr. Walsh, Baked Explorations, Dark Chocolate, Salted Caramel Brownies. Much requested recipe. We've got chocolate, we've got caramel, we've got eggs, we've got sugar, we've got a flour mixture, we've got a prepared pan. I'm going to show you the whole thing from start to finish. So join us as we take a look at how to make dark chocolate salted caramel brownies. And welcome, kids. Well, we have all-purpose flour, vanilla, sugar, corn syrup, dark chocolate, purple Pyrex, and some kosher salt. And that can only mean one thing: dark chocolate salted caramel brownie. Things in place here. I have a double boiler set up over some water. Let's get that on to some low heat. We'll let that come up. We're going to take our chocolate and let's get some, always use unsalted butter. We're going to chop this up. Put it into this pot. But first we're going to make the caramel. So, first things first is a cup of sugar. And I'm fine with doing this by volume. It works just fine. And then to stabilize this caramel, we're going to use 2 tablespoons of light corn syrup. And basically what this does is it just kind of gets in the way of the sugar molecules and makes sure this caramel stays caramelly and doesn't completely crystallize. So there's our 2 tablespoons of corn syrup, and I use Caro's light corn syrup. Seems to work just fine. And then finally, the last bit here is just a 1/4 cup of water. And we're going to put this over medium to medium-high heat. We're going to go to about a 7 there. And we're going to let that come to a boil. I'll show you this. We got this on 7. It's a little bit strong for right now, so we're going to back the heat down just a touch. And I'm not going to mess with this too much, but I'm just going to stir a little bit to get everything mixed in. Then I'm just going to leave that be. So here we go with our butter. We're going to chop this. I like a Santoku knife for this. Just gives you a little bit more depth on the blade so that it's just a little bit easier to chop. And then the idea here is you want to chop everything into roughly equal pieces so that when we add the, oops, see that? Paper. When we add the chips and we start to melt all of this together, it happens kind of all at the same pace. So there we go. We got one chopped. Basically everything's the same. Let's bring this over to our double boiler and we will get this in. And then we will get our chips in. We're in good shape. That looks really good. So now we're a little bit ahead of the game because we've gotten this started. And we're getting kind of close on the caramel. This is a good rapid simmer. We're going to start to look for, we're going to smell, and I don't smell any nuttiness yet. When that starts to smell just a little bit nutty and we see a touch of amber appear all around the rim, we're going to go ahead and move it off the heat. But For right now, that seems to be doing really pretty well. I'll grab another wooden spoon here so we can tend to that. And what you'll see is, and you can start to see it right here, this will start to melt, right? And this happens relatively quickly. So we're now in really good shape. The next thing we'd like to do is we want to prep our pan. So let's get the sugar put away for just a second, because we're going to need that again. We won't need the vanilla for just a little while. We're going to take our pan and we're going to prep it a little bit. And this is a really, really important step. Believe me, you will thank me for this step. We're going to get our cooking spray. Thank you to my wonderful mother-in-law for turning me on to Pam cooking spray. It's awesome. I don't tend to use the one for baking, which has flour in it, but that is really good too. So we're just going to give this a quick spritzy spritz. And what that's going to do is let us get the brownies out of this pan really easily. The next trick is even more important for good brownie release, and that is our parchment base trick, which is what I call it. So we're going to put a piece of parchment paper underneath our pan down and cut around the base of our pan. You'll see why in a second. Okay, so what this will give us, if we've done this well enough, is a good base for our brownies. And that will sit right on the bottom. We'll pour the batter right on top of here, and that way the brownies will release from the bottom of the pan, really with no effort whatsoever. This looks good. Starting to smell a little nutty now. And we're seeing a little bit of a color change. I don't know if you can see it around the outside there, but tiny bit of a color change. We're just going to get ready with a half a cup of heavy cream. Heavy cream. Trick here, always smell your dairy before you use it. You just never know. It's an agricultural product, and it does and can go bad at times. So we just need a half cup, and that's perfect. So this is our caramel. This is our salted caramel. And yep, you guessed it, we are going to use kosher salt, which is here, in our salted caramel when it's ready. Now I'm just seeing a little bit of color change around the outside now. Yep. And that's just about where I want it to be. You're gonna notice when you first do this that your cream seems super light, and that's okay because it's gonna darken in the oven. What you're looking for is the caramel flavor. And that doesn't begin until the amber color just starts to tinge. That's called the Maillard reaction, or at least I think it is. Buddy, correct me if I'm wrong. But that's what creates the flavor compounds that make caramel taste yummy. So you want to, there it is. There's that slightly amber tannish color around the outside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kill the heat. Always add dairy off the heat, right? So we're off the heat. And this is going to get sizzly and steamy, so you want to back your head off when you do this. Steam hurts and it will burn you, so keep in mind that you want to avoid that at all costs. Okay, so remember I said you're going to see the caramel is super, super light. That's an okay color for right now. Even if it were a little bit, a couple shades darker than this, that would be all right. Bear in mind that as this sits and waits for us, it's going to get darker. So here comes the salted caramel part. So we're going to grab a very heavy pinch of kosher salt. We're going to go right in, and I'm going to go one more. And that's plenty. So what that salt's going to do is it's going to dissolve into the caramel. And this is going to be good. The reason I'm stirring this, I don't know if you can see right at the very base of this, when we first added the cream, there was a big lump. And what I'm doing is just kind of working that lump, and so we can get it dissolved. so that this is just as smooth a mixture as we can get it. It is going to set up just a little bit between now and the time we have to use it, and that's okay. We just want to work on getting it as emulsified as we can right off. 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. We are going to also need a teaspoon of kosher salt, and we're just going to pretend that I measured that. That's Special Dark. Hey, Special Dark. And we will go with 2 tablespoons. And I find that you can't quite, you don't have to be 100% military precision with regard to that measurement either, because after all, it's chocolate. And if you get a little bit too much chocolate, well, it's chocolate. So I like to use a whisk, and I get this combined together. And this mixture is going to really be helpful to us to have ready to roll when we get the melted chocolate off the burner. So part of the reason, and I want to be clear about this, that I used a big bowl here, is we are going to melt the chocolate and the butter in this bowl, and that's really kind of coming along now. We're getting closer and closer. When that happens, we're going to add our brown sugar and regular sugar into this bowl, and then our eggs into this bowl once it cools, and then onto this bowl is going to be drizzled this mixture, this flour mixture. That's going to become our dough. It's going to go right into the pan. So, and we are getting closer, and you'll know when this is done. See the sheen that's on there? That's the butter. You'll know when this is ready, when it becomes smooth, when you don't see a lot of those lumps, but it does happen kind of quickly. So I'm going to back down the heat a little bit. We don't want to scorch this mixture. The double boiler provides us some insurance about that. But we're looking pretty good there. We also, every now and then, want to give the caramel a stir. See how it's darkened even since we last looked at it? It's a little bit darker, and that'll continue to happen, okay? This is really kind of nuclear hot. You don't want to stick your finger in there to taste it. Believe me, it's like napalm. Don't ask me how I know. All right, so we're getting there here. Let's get our sugars ready. The sugar ratios here are really, really pretty simple. So we're gonna get our white sugar, and this is our small bowl. And we are going to, whoops. We are going to go with 1 1/2 cups of white sugar. There's 1, there's roughly 1/2. We're gonna go with 1/2 cup packed of brown sugar. And we're gonna mix these really thoroughly, and I'll tell you why in just a second. So what I like to do is I like to scoop, and then I use the plastic of the bag to sort of pack it, and then that way I'm sort of a perfect 1/2 cup fully packed, okay? So we are done with these, and we are done with our sugars. We put these away. This is not a light recipe. It is not a low-fat recipe. It is not a low-sugar recipe, and I do not recommend trying to make it into one. Bear in mind that you have 11 ounces of very high-quality dark chocolate. I like to use Ghirardelli. So you'll have the health benefits of the chocolate. The rest of it just ain't healthy, and we just got to deal with that. Okay. And mix this sugar together so that we get a lot of the lumps out. Brown sugar will lump up on you like that. It's completely fine. If you can break them up, break them up. If not, they'll break down when they're in there, but I like to get as many of the lumps out up front as I can, and you'll find a lot of the brown sugar lumps when you hit them with the spoon just break down pretty easily. I think that's pretty good. Okay, so now it's so we need 5 eggs. Typically I like to have those at room temperature. I'm going to show you a little trick. Okay, see how we're mostly gone in terms of lumps here. So I'm going to kill the heat. I'm going to plenty carryover heat to melt the rest of that. Now I'm going to grab my 5 eggs. Now normally when you bake, you always want to bake with eggs that are room temperature. We don't have that today. There's 2, there's 4, and there's 5. So if you don't have that, the one way to kind of cheat a little bit, doesn't help you 100% because the eggs, the yolks are gonna still be chilled, but you can use tap-based hot water. These are cold eggs. And when the water gets, you know, just as hot as your tap gets, it's not going to cook these eggs, but it is going to do a really good job of bringing them up to room temperature faster than we could have any other way. So we'll just let those be for a second. And remember, this has to cool before we add any eggs anyway. And look, we've got pretty good smoothness here. And so we can come off the heat with this. So what I like to do is just go boop right there. Okay, so this is cooling. That's good. So we put our eggs away. Our sugar's ready to go. Our flour mixture's ready to go. But the one thing that we need to do now, and it's really important, is we need to add the vanilla. The reason we didn't do this on the heat is that vanilla is a volatile oil and it will evaporate on you. So we're gonna, you can't really over vanilla this thing, believe me. The more vanilla, the better it tastes, okay? So we're just gonna mix that in there. And again, we did that off the heat so that we could make sure that the flavor stays where we want it. It stays right in the chocolate mixture. Okay, so we're in good shape there. Our caramel mixture, again, see how it's getting a little darker and darker and darker? That's just what we want when we put it in the oven. So this has cooled. This is kind of relatively cool to the touch. I'm just gonna kind of quickly whisk it around. Yep, see that shine? We're in really good shape. You can smell the vanilla, that's great. So here we come over here, and we're gonna add our eggs. So quick tip to adding, well, actually, you know what? We will add our sugar first. Okay, all the sugar goes right in, and you can just use the same fork, it's fine. You're just gonna mix this together and get as many lumps out as you can. But see how those little lumps that we had before have just kind of dissolved away? So that's what I meant by don't go crazy with the sugar stuff. Okay. All right, so we're gonna get our eggs in, and all we're gonna do is smack them, break them, lose them. That's it, smack them, break them, lose them. Smack them, break them, lose them. And I'm watching as I put these in to make sure that I don't get any shell in there. If I do, I pick it up with the shell. It's the easy way to do it. Shells are attracted to shells for some reason. Last one. And the other thing you'll notice is that I'm not breaking these on the edge of the bowl because that drives shrapnel back up into the egg. I'm breaking it on the flat counter. So bang, it's broken. I can separate it and I don't have shards of egg. But I do have shards of egg. So like I said, scoop them and you're done. Okay, so we're gonna get these eggs incorporated, break up the yolks. That will save you lots of time. That break up the yolks trick. Hey, and you can see we're just about completely and thoroughly mixed in now. So that's good. Here, the only thing left is to mix in our flour. And then you just sprinkle this over the top, okay? So that's out now. We can put that in the sink. And then what we're gonna do is just fold, okay? And the reason I'm folding this kind of gently is that this is flour, and obviously the chocolate mixture has a lot of moisture in it, right? As soon as you mix flour and moisture, what starts to form is gluten, okay? Gluten's not a bad thing. Gluten adds structure to baked goods. But we don't want to over-mix this, because if we did, they get super, super cakey and a little bit tough. And we want kind of a fudgy consistency to these. So you notice what I'm doing is kind of digging around the edges and making sure that that flour is not sticking there. And then I'm sort of going into the middle and turning over, going in, turning over, going in, turning over. And I'm going to go until this is sort of kind of most of the way mixed in, and I'm not seeing any flour sitting on the surface anymore. And we're getting pretty close to that now. It's a good idea to sort of turn it one or two more times just to make sure. And we're good. We're good. Walk away. Walk away. We don't need to mix anymore. This is our brownie batter. It's done. It's ready to go. It's going to go in here in 2 stages. But we need our caramel, right? Told you it was going to get darker, and sure enough, it's darker, right? See, I told you it was going to set up, and sure enough, it is set up. So in my experience, if we had added sour cream to this, which it calls for, it would be a lot thicker. I don't want that. So we're going to put this right here, and we're going to add half the brownie mixture right now. And when we get that added in, and that looks good, we get that added in, and don't worry about it, there's little pockets of flour there, those are going to bake out. We're going to kind of spread this just a little bit so that we have an even layer, and see if we can create a little bit of a... All right, perfect. So now the easy part, the fun part, is art with caramel. Yay! So we're going to go in with our caramel, and I'm just trying to stick to where the chocolate is. It's naturally going to fall where it falls, and that's just fine. But try to get it as even a spread as you can. Now, one thing that I've learned is that when I make these, there often is lots of caramel. See how much caramel is left in that pan? You don't want to lose that, so you definitely want to get that in there. Now, at this point, our caramel is cooled. Actually, we could eat it if we wanted to. And my experience with the members of my household, Deb, is that they often do want to eat the caramel. So don't make the mistake. You will anger people if you take this and throw it right in the sink and start putting water into it. This is what's called a Scooby snack for people around the house, as is the spoon. So I just do that. That will wait for Deb to come home later. And then all we're going to do is put the rest of our batter on top. And again, just trying to go as evenly as we can. I don't worry too much about what's what in terms of where's where and where there's caramel and those kinds of things, because my experience is as it cooks, the caramel is going to kind of get into the corners and on the side. So that's ready to roll. And these go in. And these are going to go in for just 40 minutes. That's enough. Timer, and let's see what they look like. All right, settle down, Beavis. Here we go. All right, and this is what we want to see. And I'm getting kind of no pushback here. They feel a little loose, and they should jiggle a little bit. Yeah, got to jiggle a little bit. That's good. That's good. So we're going to take it out. Okay, so you can see the caramel here along the sides has gotten that beautiful caramelly color. It's gathered in the corners. That's why the corner slices are always going to be the caramelly kind of slices. So I'm going to slide this back. So our next step really, and important to do this before things cool down too much, is we're going to grab a heavy pinch of kosher salt, and we're just going to rain it down, making it rain up in here. All right, and that's just about plenty. We might touch it with a little bit later. Another tip is, as this cools, we're going to come back in about an hour. I'm not going to show you this on camera. We're going to come back in about an hour, and all this caramel will start to will just have set, and we're just going to take a butter knife and go all the way around and pull it off the sides. That'll make your job later a lot easier. If you let that set up attached to the side, it's a lot harder. That cooking spray buys us some insurance, but if you can get it off there just after it sort of starts to set, but before it fully sets, that's ideal. So dark chocolate salted caramel brownies are done. They'll settle a little bit in the pan. And so there you go. Hope you enjoyed cooking with Dr. Mike. And if you're interested in more recipes, let me know. I will try to link to this recipe. I'll list this recipe as I post the video. All right. Have a great day, everybody. See ya.